Of King's Own DragonX, who the favorites were.
KT roster.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Lowell Park for LCK Spring 2019. I'm Atlas back on the desk with Papa Smithy, and I am so excited to be closing out the week because finally it feels like we've got some normalcy. Yesterday we had the absolute smashing that Jin Air took from Griffin, and now we've got some games that might be a little bit closer, Papa.
And Atlas, you say normalcy, and I think these are two teams where normalcy we're unsure of, because SANDBOX Gaming were kind of surprising in that 2-0 victory over Gen G that propels them to join names like Griffin and Damwon in terms of the next generation. Is it just Griffin and Damwon, or is this an indication that that talent also extends to the side of SANDBOX Gaming? Meanwhile, yes, King's Own were very straightforward defeated by Griffin earlier in this week, but I think most teams are going to be pretty straightforward defeated by Griffin. What can King's Own show today? This is a matchup where if they don't win, that's where the panic station really does start.
And how much better have SANDBOX actually gotten as well, because they didn't find the victory against Gen G in their first showing this year, which was during the Casper Cup, and now everything has changed. They managed to get that 2-0, but we'll see what they can do against King's Own. Standings on your screen right now, SKT and Griffin alongside Damwon in that top spot, everyone tied with that +4 scoreline, but SANDBOX wanting to join them there as well. And you mentioned newcomers into the league. Damwon Gaming and SANDBOX are our two new ones from the challenges, and they're looking fantastic. We'll see whether SANDBOX can put another win under their belt, because King's Own not necessarily a team that's looking formidable at this point in time. However, with only the sample size being a game against Griffin, you don't necessarily know where to put them.
You get a mulligan, Atlas, but do you get two?
Yeah.
Do you get three? That's the question that's going to be answered today by King's Own DragonX. Going to have to look at the rosters as well once we get into it to understand just who we're fielding on both sides. I think SANDBOX, no real impetus to change anything. I think deservedly, they probably come in favorites here.
Yeah, I absolutely think so as well, because Gen G, of course, a team that made it to the final in Casper Cup, certainly not a bad squad there at all, but let's hear from the players.
서밋이라는 이제 아이디를 쏜 친구가 이제 샌드박스에 들어가게 되면서 되게 이런 팀이 있었구나.
지난 시즌 때는 킹존이 정말 강하다. 진짜 어지간하면 이길 수 없다라는 생각까지도 했었던 팀인데
작년이랑 이번이랑 느낌이 많이 바뀐 것 같아서
솔직히 그냥 말하면 별로 강해 보이진 않고요. 저희도 이제 호흡만 잘 맞추면 해볼만 할 것 같다고 생각하고.
제가 알기로 서포터가 되게 나이가 많으신 걸로 알고 있거든요.
저는 뭐랄까 나이에 대해서 항상 잊으려고 생각해서
나부터면요? 진짜 죄송하지만 제가 이길 것 같아요.
제일 중요한 승부처는 전 미드 정글이라고 생각해요.
적 정글 플릭 선수가 굉장히 잘하는 선수이니까 커즈 선수의 역할이 제일 중요할 것 같아요.
커즈 선수가 솔랭에서는 정말 잘하는 걸로 알고 있는데 대회에서는 솔랭만큼은 아닌 걸로 알고 있거든요. 살짝 많이 공격적이신 것 같은데 요즘은 공격적인 게 좀 안 좋은 것 같아서
결국 대회에서 결과가 보여주겠죠? 누가 이길지는.
생각보다 도부 형이 그 알려진 거에 비해서 되게 잘하거든요.
약간 도발식으로 해야 되나요? 강등 안 되시킵니다.
원래 맞기 전에는 누구나 다 그런 생각을 해요. 제가 한번 세게 한번 때려주겠습니다.
조혁이 형 이제 나 때문에 안다고는 했는데 샌드박스 게임에 인상 깊게 내가 경기로 남겨줄게.
저희가 좀 더 편한 마음가짐으로 경기를 임할 수 있다고 생각합니다.
좀 아직 잘 모르시고 과소평가하실 수도 있는데 그렇게 만만한 상대는 아닐 거예요. 더 열심히 준비해서 꼭 이기는 모습 보이고 싶어요.
열심히보다는 잘 하겠습니다. 잘 하는 게 더 중요하니까요.
Our pawn never change. Man who is more than happy to trash talk, even though he comes off losses and pretty terrible performances in a lot of cases. Doesn't matter, his confidence is always there. You can see panning over Kingzone DragonX right now. See whether they can finally put a W in that first column because it's empty right now.
And should tell everybody that these Trash Talk videos were recorded before the season started. So, of course, Kingzone probably feel a little bit different now that they're coming off a very one-sided loss. And now, while it's not must-win yet, for the confidence of this team moving forward, you don't want to get 4 match days in without a game win, Atlas, and that's a possibility for Kingzone. They come into the stadium here. They will, of course, be staying with the same roster. Acorn on the right next to Harai as the head coach. Nice little applause from the audience here. And let's see if they can show more than last time out, especially around the top, jungle, and mid.
Yeah.
They need to show a higher level of performance.
Exactly right. That first blood that was picked up by Defton Tucson was fantastic. But let's look over the other side of the rift. SANDBOX Gaming, who were actually 0-2'd by Gen.G in the Kesper Cup and then came back and answered that in pretty dominating fashion in their first match of the LCK, where it all counts. Now making their way out into Lowell Park for their second showing. When you promote alongside Damwon Gaming, a team that has looked brilliant so far, this is another team that will be drawing some heads, building their fan base. See whether they can once again come out swinging.
And I said this last time, but the meme with this team was what people thought of this team was, damn, aren't those players tall? That was one of the things there. If Hollow was in the lineup instead of Ghost, they are kind of a giant lineup by Korean standards. And also the Bitcoin meme. That was their old name. Team Battle Comics, renamed to SANDBOX Gaming. A lot of people have no idea who they were. I was actually talking to Cloud Templar about what the Korean fans thought of SANDBOX, and they said, well, they don't really know who they are. The same meme as we get on the English side is there on the Korean side. People know Kingzone DragonX, but they know them as a contender, and right now, Rascal Cuz, Pawn, Defton, Tucson did not look, in fact, far from a contender against Griffin. But was that about Griffin or was that about Kingzone? I feel like SANDBOX Gaming is a more true test.
And if we look at yesterday, certainly Griffin continued what was a steamroller of a performance against Jin Air. But over the side of SANDBOX, Summit coming over from the Afrika Freaks wants to get a victory against his former teammate in Tucson. Of course, didn't play a lot with the Afrika Freaks while he was there. On Fleek, the god of solo queue with Dove, Ghost, and Joker to round out that squad. And we've watched Deft smash Ghost in lane all of 2018. Now, is it going to be the other way around is the question.
Ghost took down Ruler, and now it's Deft. And like you say, there's a lot of vengeance for Ghost. It's very difficult to talk about struggling players, but Ghost was off the pace against basically every opponent. When we saw him last on BBQ Oliver's, he looks recharged. And again, a lot of BBQ players are going to other groups and other regions and trying to shed what was a very abjectly poor 2018 performance. I want to talk about the middle point here. The Darius in the mid lane that we saw, the Victor in the bot lane from Ghost. Pawn was talking about how he just crushed Dove. He might not even be facing Dove because Summit was playing mid lane.
Exactly.
In the second game last time out, and it was the draft. Remember, the last pick Lucian into Galio, and then flexing the Darius in game number 2. SANDBOX Gaming, we were really energized by their pick bans, which were rewarded with solid gameplay as well.
Yeah, it was very exciting to see what they actually put onto the Rift, and we won't actually know where any of these champions are going until the very end. But speaking of pick and ban, we are there right now for game number 1. Kingzone will be on our blue side, SANDBOX on the red. And that means that SANDBOX Gaming will have that counter pick that everyone talks about, and Victor taken away immediately. Who's that a ban against? Papa, is that Ghost, Dove, or Summit?
I would say almost entirely Ghost, and what that tells me is the Kingzone are really feeling something like the Xayah Rakan. They were playing 2 games of Kai'Sa Gragas when we saw them, and obviously had a very good early laning phase against Viper and Lehends. Reason why I say Xayah Rakan is that actually Victor Bot is one of the safest choices against Xayah Rakan, because you take teleport, you get your first item, you upgrade your death ray, and you just try not to interact with what can be a kill lane in the Xayah Rakan. So Victor removed means that Ghost will have to be a bit more traditional. And if you're deft and you've played against Ghost and beaten him in the past, you say, hey, no dirty weapons. Let's just play 80 carry versus 80 carry and make it normal. You understand that sort of approach, and I do like this Rakan ban. Rakan has been first round. Now it's a first round ban.
And this is exactly what you were talking about. They wanted to go towards something like that. Xayah Rakan off the board right now. And what was left up because of that is that Akali that's snapped up very, very early.
But also other stuff.
Left available.
Urgot Galio could be locked in here.
Absolutely.
In the first round, 2 champions that aren't necessarily going to kill the Akali, but aren't going to lose to it either. So you could go double solo lane. The meta recently...
Hey, this is SANDBOX. That's not necessarily double solo lane. That is a possible support champion in the Galio if they do decide to lock it in.
And because it is SANDBOX, there's no guarantee they take a solo lane here because they've been really tricky about their lanes. They're happy to run Darius in the 2019 meta, and we all know about Korean solo queue. Professional play Darius, more exciting and more enamoring.
Please don't talk about Flash Ghost Darius anymore.
They are still going to lock in. Ostensibly, they're 2 solo lanes, and they are 2 lanes that contend with the Akali well. So I guess they're Akali hunting in the first round, but that's at the cost of a first-round support and something like a Lucian that's actually available 3rd round of picks on the blue side.
Yeah, so Lucian being considered right now, only 9 seconds to go, most likely will be picked up here for Kingzone. Do they just take a support here and not really show their hand, or is jungle going to be something that Cuz is going to prioritize? Clock ticks down, but we still do have a few more seconds to go as that timer was slightly off, so Pawn's still considering what he wants to do.
Tier list-wise, we're kind of rocking out on the side of Kingzone. Getting Akali and Lucian both is something that has been impossible recently. Sion's available and can contend with Urgot and Lissandra very well. Unfortunately, can't just build 1 resist type because of the mixed damage already confirmed. On the side of SANDBOX, so yeah, ignore the timers for now, guys. Waiting to see what Pawn be locking in for his side. Hopefully we don't have any lobby remakes that were plaguing LEC last night.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing our best LEC impression over here.
Timers!
As there we are. Still 12 seconds to go. Man, so much time as Sion is the consideration. Still going down the tier list, that certainly does make some sense here. If it is going to be locked in.
I feel like sounds are a bit off today. The sounds of League of Legends. Maybe we'll have to wait for the
Are we in the past or something like that?
We are.
Papa? Where
Maybe
are
we're
we?
in the future. We're the FLICKR casters.
Oh my god.
We did say Sion and they locked it in.
Hey, that's true. That's true.
The only profit thing I've said so far this week is when I called the orange support because of a Brom ban.
I've got one as well with the Elise support, so I guess we're both
five.
Here. We did it. We did it, Papa Smithy.
That probably came through on our sounds. I hear a lock-in. I don't know what it means.
Yep. I think that might have...
Let's confirm something. We can confirm that Dove has named himself after the soap.
We were having that conversation before. One of my favorite little tidbits, actually, because Dove soap is what I grew up with. My mum was a huge fan of Dove soap, so I'm a huge fan of SANDBOX Gaming.
There you go. See?
And I also loved Battle Comics because I've had to do voiceover for this team so many times, but they never quite made it in.
Getting the confirmation from our producer that, yes, we are having a client champ select issue, so I believe it may have to be remaking, but I hear some music. All right, we're getting
things
started.
are also catching up. We're catching up a little bit here when it comes to the spectator client. I believe that is a Thresh locked in. Maybe we will be heading back to the lobby as we're going to have a missed ban on SANDBOX's side, which might mean that we head back and try this one again.
But we get to enjoy the music. That's
yeah,
what I'm
finally
talking about.
we get to rock out. I was a bit confused.
Whoa,
before.
whoa, whoa.
It's like we had to make
Start
the
the
ambience
music.
ourselves.
Exactly. We can sing songs. You and I have gone to Noraebang, which is the Korean
That's
term
true.
for
I mean, you were
karaoke.
singing yesterday on broadcast.
That's
I enjoyed
true.
a bit of that. You were mentioning the damn Mario Brothers
You remember
movie
this, right?
rap, man.
No,
that
not
was
the,
so
not the,
cool.
Not the movie, the TV show out.
Yeah, sorry, the TV show. I also loved the movie, though. I was a huge
It was
fan
called
of
the
that one.
Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Yeah.
Again, this is really dating us. This was like 1993 was,
Yeah.
I believe, the first time it aired. You can Google it.
And
Does exist.
there was like a stage a few years ago where everyone was making memes about it as well, and that was also super funny.
Again, the best part of the show was the cartoon part was actually pretty good. The live action part where actually former pro wrestler Captain Lou Albano was playing Mario was amazing. But the ending, because the ending was they do the Mario rap, and it was awesome. You guys should definitely YouTube the ending of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Yeah, you thought Captain Planet was good.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, it was. It was fantastic. As was the poker rap that you referenced to
Yeah,
yesterday,
okay.
which I am sure most of our
Yeah,
audience
exactly.
actually
That's the
knows
part
about.
where people are like,
Thank
I've
goodness.
heard of that.
Yeah, or the DK rap. Does people still know about the DK rap? Thankfully, Smash Brothers brought it back from Donkey Kong 64.
See, I feel pretty confident about what our fans know and don't, because our fans do pick up on subtle references, like things
They
about
do.
Justana yesterday. But what
need to bring
what
that
I'm
back
not
up
100% clear on is when is the kind of watershed where you don't have to explain the further things? Like, do we need to explain who CJ Entis were?
Oh, this
It's
is getting
2019.
scary, Papa Smithy. Yes.
And then, do we need to explain who Dade is? Because actually, among the Korean community, the fact that Dade isn't in the right now
Yeah, the
isn't
Hall
part
of
of the
Fame.
legends there is a big point. Dade also hasn't played in Korea since the LCK era begun, and hasn't played professional in coming on 3 years. So
Yeah.
those explanations, that's where I feel like I'm dating myself. When it's actually League of Legends wise, and we don't have to talk about 2000. That's a 1993 YouTube sensations. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So let's zoom out. We are here on a Sunday afternoon. Yes, 5 p.m. is close enough to afternoon by esports
say so,
standards. Looking at our coaches, Harai actually has the coaching headset on. Acorn not on stage for
Yeah,
this
he
one.
was actually on stage for the last one, so interesting to see that they've mixed up the drafting coach. I know that Pawn is very vocal during draft, so a lot of what a drafting coach does is, try to deal with the players on this Kingzone squad.
There is the LCK logo circled with lights. Very, very close to us here behind the English caster desk. We are on one side. If you guys are wondering where we are in terms of geography, we are backing onto the Kingzone DragonX side. So I guess it'll be picture left, diagonally above where Pawn is sitting.
Yeah,
whereas
if you were
the
this
Korean
camera, you would
casters
just
are on the
pan it
opposite
to the
side.
right
Yeah.
and have a look over the top of the audience.
And Korean casters on the opposite side of Lowell Park. 450 strong here in Lowell Park.
Not quite full at the moment, so
No.
if you are here in Korea, you could possibly grab yourself a ticket at the door.
Well, it turns out Kingzone DragonX fans have defected, and SANDBOX Gaming fans are still building their fan base.
Yeah.
Now, again, they now have something more than just being a Bitcoin meme and also being tall. They have sick drafts. Remember, SANDBOX's draft, the most innovative of the week. And look, I know Griffin locked in some cool champions.
They did.
But I'm a big fan of flexing Lucian and things like that, where it's a bit more
I feel like the
subtle,
flexing,
you know?
the flexing that Griffin did was a different kind of flexing
Exactly.
to what SANDBOX
They
did.
were showing off their big muscles.
Yeah.
And, you look at them and you're like, those are some nice big muscles you have.
Yes.
But it's not surprising. It's not next leveling. It's just, hey,
and it's also
we're strongmen.
It's not necessarily strategically what you'd want to do. I mean, support Elise isn't necessarily going to win you a lane. In fact, it didn't at all when they played it up against
It was very
Kingzone.
flashy, literally, because he flashed a lot.
He did.
But the support
Cocoons
on
came out as well. They
There's
just didn't hit.
something about the support on. Is
Well,
all
I
I'll
actually
say.
loved
that. One's a good
I
one.
loved that. And,
That's a good.
That one I want to see other teams picking up as well, because we've seen games going relatively late, and so you're probably going to get more of those on upgrades than you otherwise would have thought, possibly heading into this season, because it was the thought that everything would just snowball out of control and we'd have teams winning in 25 minutes. And yes, that has been happening, but not necessarily as much as we could have potentially projected.
It's still a really fast meta. What I've noticed is I feel like at 22 minutes, you know who's going to win. Does that mean they win at 26 minutes? Not always, but the game is decided. But sometimes it's decided by comps with no siege, and it's, okay, second Baron, okay, maybe the Elder has to spawn. It's still a snowball meta, and it still is really fast. You know, we're getting out of here at 9:30 p.m. in some cases.
Well, I
Let's,
mean,
you know,
I feel
with
like
an
Griffin
8 p.m.
versus
start
Jinner helped
time.
you there, but
True.
yes.
True. All I'm saying is the game, we're not 8.1 meta. 8.1 meta, thankfully, gone. 1 year later, 9.1 meta. Double thumbs up from the casting team here. It is a lot more fast and fun. And the cool picks that are coming through are because, strategically, there are kind of no must-pick ban champions. I guess the frontline tanks. Galio Scion, pretty close. Rakan, Zaya,
Are we
pretty
at a
close.
point where now, like, Cassiopeia doesn't feel unbeatable now, so maybe she is still getting almost permabanned, but doesn't feel all that necessary?
In Korea, I'd say it's a permaban. When I've been seeing the LEC, it's kind of always mid, and I think Cassiopeia mid can be beaten by a lot of different strategies. Was always
we saw that last night, right?
Farm it out with Victor or approach it with ganks, that sort of thing. The fact that it can go bot lane, top lane, and I think LCK players so far have been more willing to three-way flex and even move the players to other lanes, which again is a good sign after kind of an inflexible 2018.
I also know that if Deft gets Cassiopeia, he basically wins the game.
Okay.
On a lot of the streams that I've been watching, it's just been Deft killing everyone on Cassiopeia and then FLICKR dashing around in the mid lane as Aatrox having a great time, and then the game's over.
But you did mention the Aatrox and FLICKR part, and Pawn right now is not on FLICKR's level. There were 2014, you could say yes, out-dueled him many times.
2015.
People get very mad when you talk about 2014 Pawn versus FLICKR because they reject the Kryptonite storyline, which I agree.
Oh, yeah.
Pawn did have some good individual performances against him. Definitely not the case since he came back in 2017. Maybe one game in 2017 where he out-dueled FLICKR, but otherwise pretty FLICKR dominated. In 2019, we need more data points on Pawn because the reason why he's on a star, because some people look at this and say, Pawn in 2019, how could this happen? He wasn't playing in summer. The reason is he was beasting it in solo queue around the back end of Worlds and just after Worlds, and he's actually kind of sought after. There was 3 or 4 teams I was informed of by people speaking about transfer moves saying, we want Pawn, whether it was starter or as a very likely to play backup. Going on to King's Zone, they caught his attention, and it all fell into place from there. Right now, we haven't seen the justification in Kesper Cup or in the LCK, but he signed up for 18 best of 3s, and while Neon is there, we do expect Pawn to be the heavy starter. So how that all comes together, we wait and see.
Yeah, and also Pawn has always been a very aggressive, very win-more type player, and his experience against Griffin was everyone lost, and then he found himself in amongst 4 people in most fights, and it was just pretty awful. So back-to-back Urgot games left a little bit to be desired for Pawn. I want to see him on something that's a little bit more comfortable. He's still spamming Azir in solo queue, man. It feels like Pawn, he has decided that he doesn't necessarily want to evolve. He wants to become a better version of himself.
And my worry there is, when I think of other players like that where they're still playing their picks, Fly, for example, they do look a bit off the pace. And Pawn needs to prove to me that either he can bend other people to his champion pool or play the champions that he needs to play. And you need one of those.
And what has 2019 taught us? 2019's taught us that it's about new, and it's about having different picks, different ideology, and having champion pools that are extraordinarily wide.
And I like the fact that you say both. It's not just I lock in these champions and can press the buttons pretty good. We've seen the old generation play Camille jungle and look pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the same when Score and Peanut were playing it as when On Fleek and Canyon are playing it. Then you see game on game, an adaptation, I believe, was On Fleek the second game against Peanut. He runs in, he's invading Sejuani at a red, getting flashes out. You need to actually play the champion in the spirit of why it's strong, of why it's in the meta, rather than just be able to generally use the abilities. And that's the harder part. Can you pilot defensive champions defensively and offensive champions offensively, whether they're in the middle of your champion pool or whether you're picking them up newly? And that's tricky, and I think a lot of players have been forced to very quickly adapt to the new meta, and not all of them are passing with flying colors, at least if we're judging upon Kesper Cup and the first week of LCK Spring.
And I feel like also LCK has always been this region of players that have tendencies, that have a way of playing the game that sort of suits them, you know.
And you would smile about it, like,
yeah,
it's ambition.
You know,
oh, he's not going to gank.
It's the herbivore,
he's farming. It doesn't matter what champion he's playing. But the problem is, now the carnivores are just killing it.
That was going to be my point, you know. The point is, like, now we're looking at Tarzan and having words like potentially the best player in the world, but that's because he can play it all. He can do all the different styles. Yesterday we saw him play Eve into Zac. If there's not a better dichotomy to demonstrate that, I don't know what is.
And I do like the fact that we're talking this out, because you get to find different spins on what we've already been talking about, dinosaurs being extinct and things like that. think about the word tendency. I have a tendency to do this. If someone else knows that, they can play into, around, against your tendency.
Exactly.
If you're a pro player with a tendency, you're exploitable one way or the other. If you're a pro, like, what's Tarzan's tendency? It seems to be to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
His tendency is, oh yes, I'll combat you as Zach versus Camille. I'll also play Evelyn. If you don't have a tendency, how can you be herded into one direction or the other? Maybe you can't. And arguably, every player will be forced to show tendencies. If you have an established one, which Fly, Ambition, these sort of players do, you are getting found out in this fast-paced meta.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this a lot, you know, hiding strategies, making sure that you can, you know, try and keep things under wraps and surprise people still, because a lot of these players have tape that goes back so far, especially if you're looking at Kingzone's roster at the moment, the bottom side of the map, including mid lane. You've got Pawn, Deft, and Tucson that have been around for almost forever, and so SANDBOX Gaming know everything about what these players are good at, what they're not so good at, what they can exploit, what they can't, where the champion pools are at, things like that. You can look at their solo queue. You were talking yesterday about the frustrations of a FLICKR who will be playing later, guys, at 8 p.m. They play internal scrims, so you don't necessarily get to look at the solo queue, but you do have still a couple of years of FLICKR freaks with a very similar roster that you can look at, you can understand the tendencies of, and work out how this goes. So guys, we're still getting champ select sorted out for this game. I believe the picks will be the same from what we had last time. The bans were interesting with that Victor going away as the first ban, but on the blue side do have a little bit more of that flexibility. And speaking of which, we are back in there again. So I cast a curse getting back into champion select, and it worked in our favor, guys.
Hopefully we're just resuming in the second round of bans. We might have to speed run through the first set again. I hear a good sound. It sounded like a ban. Oh. Well, all right. Sounds. We're working on things.
There's
guys.
one of them.
There's kinks to be worked out.
Indeed. But things are going exactly the same as they were. I picked up my pen to write things down. I don't need to write over the top of the things that I've already done. And Pup just tried to throw it away. But we got it. We got it back. We're fine. We're fine.
All right. So we'll run through, guys. If you didn't join us for the first run of this pick ban, we were into the second round of bans, and there was a skipped ban on the side of SANDBOX. So I assume that one will be locked in. We had a skip ban from Griffin yesterday, but that sounded like a time issue rather than a client issue.
Yeah, when it's a client problem and you try to lock something in and can't, that's when a remake happens. If you just haven't made up your mind and the ban goes through, sorry, mate, you're not going to be banning anything.
Basically, if it's in the player's power, then perhaps they should have adjusted it, whereas if it's out of their power, well, we can fix that. Kingzone continue to run through here on the blue side. Nothing being revealed. Lots of meta champions in the first round.
I think Thresh would be a good answer here. Oh, look at me go.
Look at you, predicting away. So, SANDBOX Gaming. Let's see what ban we're going to see. I see Ghost typing something in on his Korean keyboard here, so probably will be banning this time around.
Yeah, we'll see exactly what the thought process is. And if you're Kingzone, do you think about banning the Callista here? Because Thresh has already been locked in. Is it likely that that's going to be the pickup for these guys?
We should talk about what is being banned. Thresh already locked in, so we don't have to think about an orange support, but orange support is something that you could consider in a lot of games. And yes, I agree with you, Atlas, that because Ghost has shown Callista and is a legacy Callista player, we've already seen junglers try to dive Callista Thresh and be reminded that is super duper hard to pull off. So cool to see the Callista ban on the side of Kingzone. What are they going to pair it with here as the support pool? Yeah, it's pretty thin for Tucson. Remember, Tucson always wants to be unengaged, so SANDBOX, you look at SANDBOX's comp and you say, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that word, but anyway, oh crap, you should ban Tahm Kench.
Yep.
But it's Tucson's Tahm Kench. That's the one that
and
you don't worry about so much.
No, he can be a battle frog, and since he has got a few more offensive tools just recently, I feel like Tucson has come into his own a little bit more. Because remember, Tucson was fantastic at Tahm Kench until he wasn't.
Is going to be playing,
Good
though.
Lord, okay, there we are.
We were talking to our Observer, and he was desperate for some Draven. It's Draven time already here. Draven Thresh. This is some people been watching Misfits, enjoying some guerrilla gameplay, and trying to ape what we saw come out there. I was talking to you about the orange support. The Braum ban will open it up, and this is going to be an orange support from Kingzone. You can go unstoppable through the death sentence, but it doesn't dissipate the hook, and you can still follow the second part of the death sentence.
And you also don't get a shield anymore, which could be very, very important against billions of damage that Ghost is going to be dishing out. Those spinning axes are going to be a really big problem because
we're engaging on the side of King Zone. This is one way to approach it.
Oh, that's another way.
They're going to adjust, and Cuz moves to Lee Sin. Interesting. It's definitely the second best Lee Sin on King Zone. Last year, as Peanut was always able to pull one out on that particular champion. No Yasuo synergies with this, but they have a lot of creative ways, both long range and short range, to pull off engage. Long range Siege, they don't have that, so team fighting is what King Zone is looking for, and potentially an Akali overwhelming in the side lanes. Focusing on SANDBOX here, FLICKR has had 5th pick, counter pick of jungle many, many times, and in spite of there being a lot of tankiness on the side of King Zone, he's going to pull a Canyon, pick up this Kha'Zix, and will we see the R evolve that Canyon has been appreciating recently?
Yeah, I actually quite like it when you've got a team composition that has a Draven, because you want to win as quickly as you possibly can. They've got other facilitators on this map. Urgot and Lissandra are going to have no worries just pushing and laning against their opponents, because they managed to get that counter pick in the Lissandra against the Akali that has a decent time. Being able to stop her from just rolling over the top. We've seen the matchup go either way, but Dove should be all right. Got a last-second switch as Rascal's going to be taking the Akali towards the top side against the Urgot. Like I was saying, the Lissandra is a decent matchup, but I don't know, if you were SANDBOX Gaming, you'd probably just put Dove on the top side of the map. They've done that one before, and they may just do it again. Coaches are going to shake hands. We'll see what happens as we move into game number 1. Some exciting things to talk about in the draft and some different approaches to this game for both sides.
Whenever I see a Draven, I'm excited to see how it pans out. Zooming in first on King Zone DragonX. Pretty standard comp here. Rascal been practicing a lot of the Akali and solo queue. Not going to get too much backup from the Lee Sin. Early, you'd imagine, short of maybe some pathing around Scuttle in the early game. Pawn, he moves away from Urgot. He's going to be roaming around on the Scion, so going to be a little bit more beholden to his team when it comes to potentially opening up some engage. On this side, though, of SANDBOX, they've been pulling a lot of fast ones. This time, it is the Draven from Ghost. No Victor. He's back on a Marksman. Some pretty strong lanes for FLICKR to visit, but also the chance that if this Kha'Zix doesn't get going, the outscale potential is pretty real.
It is, but like you say, it's a bit of a feast or famine meta anyway, and here we are onto Summoner's Rift for game number 1 of the day. See who's going to be taking it this time. SANDBOX still trying to get their fans together, like you were saying earlier on, Papa Smithy. King Zone still some loyalty there and wanting to try and hold on to whatever fans they've kept. He said a lot of them have been defecting. This could be a chance for them to A, even out their scoreline, and B, try and get back some of their heritage. This is a team that was the most feared not that long ago.
And you know what I'm going to fear this game, Atlas? It's Press the Attack Draven. That is a very interesting rune choice, even, on a champion that we see very, very infrequently in Korea. Gango gets the Draven bans when he's playing for KT Rolster, as that's most played on the season is Draven. But it is the competitive debut of Ghost on Draven. He's really trying to rebuild his personal reputation alongside SANDBOX, like you say, building a reputation. It's one of the contenders here for playoffs in Korea. Watching the level 1s, looks like a red buff start here from Kha'Zix, but do notice that Lissandra and Urgot are going to be both looking for lane assignments here, and this seems to be a new thing about SANDBOX. They are happy to put their solo laners in whichever matchup best suits the player.
That being said, King Zone have decided to counter it at the very beginning, but unfortunately, it's gone back the other way. So, nice to see that the answer is certainly there. Pawn, you can see, will be on the top side of the map.
I think overall, I prefer the King Zone lane assignments here. It's pretty easy for Scion to just shrug off and wave clear next to Lissandra, and Urgot's kill pressure on Akali pretty much nil when it comes to the Shroud here, which gets a lot of value.
In the mid lane.
In early trades from level 2, the Shroud is so useful because you basically can't use the Machine Gun W because the Shroud will just dissipate all those pseudo-auto attacks, and hitting the ult and actually pinning down an Akali. Best of luck for Summit. Regardless, those are the lane assignments we're going to get, at least for the early game here. Level 2 is hit, and you know what? You do have to vacate most Draven lanes because they get level 2, and then your ability to hit the lane is pretty minimal.
Yes. So a lot of respect being given. I actually did a little bit of research just then to see how much Deft has actually played Lucian in the past, because he just doesn't feel necessarily like a Lucian player. The man has a 72% win rate on the champion, but is certainly not up there as far as his most played champions. In fact, he's played more Corki and Cogmore, which says that in metas gone by, he's certainly put in more time elsewhere, as Rascal's really having his way with Summit here in the mid lane. The top laners facing off in a different lane, but still in the same matchup.
These matchups can actually be abated on the first back, but first back going to be delayed. Joker throws out the hook, so much less threat from him, but don't need much assistance if you're Ghost on this Draven. Note that he's gone. Again, we talked about the Pressy attack. The Pressy attack is the laning rune for doing damage. He doesn't have Conqueror to kill tanks later, so it's all about ganks.
Yep, in comes on Fleek. He's already flashed on top of Deft. It's a good flash to get out of the way of the Flay, but not enough for the death sentence. First blood is going to go down. The flash is everything, but that was an auto attack from the turret that was always going to get through. Pawn's got double buffs and a double kill as Joker is still on the wrong side of the map. Tucson will have the Bellows Breath, but he doesn't need it. He's got the knock up. Pawn trying to get in here, but I believe Joker is still dead. And that is so much for Kingzone after that very aggressive dive from SANDBOX.
Just too hasty from the side of SANDBOX Gaming. They're trying to play towards the choice of the Pressy attack. It told us that they wanted to play aggressive, but remember, turrets do more damage early in the game. It's so much harder to reset aggro and decrease damage on those turret shots. They all get low in the desperation to get a kill onto Ghost. He may pick up the Vamp Scepter, but it's not enough to justify 3 kills to the side of Kingzone.
Yeah, checking this one out once again. The one good news story is that Ghost was the one that picked up the kill onto Deft. So what little adoration stacks he managed to pick up by level 3 was able to get a little bit, but it wasn't that much gold, as you saw just there.
And it was a pretty big mistake also from OnFleek. He did not notice that there was a turret shot mid-flight, so when he flashed over the wall to get away from the teleporting Scion, he was already dead, straight up to the turret shot that was going to hit him. He was at 200 health. That turret shot was going to do about 300 damage, so in the end, he wastes his summoner on that dive. There's actually a lot of agency to Cuz, who picked up experience in the top side. So while Pawn loses out on a couple of minions, Cuz is going to have a fast level 6 and a lot of people to return to whose summoners are down.
And Pawn's absolutely fine at this point anyway.
He's got double buffs, baby.
Double buffs, and he's only 9 CS behind after all that. So 2-0-1. Scion is in pretty good position. Kingzone have switched things back, just making sure that they can pick up as much lane farm as they can. So Rascal moved around, able to catch himself back up to where Summit had already made it to.
Doing the swapsies now, as Dove would really like to face the Akali one time. I was wondering how the back timings would interact with item purchases, because if you see magic resist, you can swap your soul laners on the side of SANDBOX, and the merry-go-round continues.
Yep. Pawn's just going to clear out the minion wave, and thankfully he's a Scion, so he can do that. Has a lot of freedom to get himself around. His Joker is hunting Cuz, who does half of the damage to this Rift Scuttler, but he is going to just leash it for OnFleek.
Here's what I'll say about Joker. You know he's a good shot caller. He is, of course, the oldest player in the LCK, older than Old Man score. I know, it's a weird thing to think about. His skill shot accuracy on the death sentence is pretty poor, all things considered, but he's really feisty. He's happy to roam out of lane. He looks for plays. He's trying to be a leader. And while you're not hitting every death sentence, I do like the endeavor he shows, because I think it catches a lot of the more traditional LCK mainstays a bit off guard, because he's always trying something rather than holding on to cooldowns and trying to zone.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like he's trying something without having an idea of what it necessarily is. So he's trying something and putting his brain into it as well. So I've really enjoyed watching Joker play, and like you say, the mechanics may not necessarily be up there, but as old men ourselves, you need to find your niche in League of Legends if you don't quite have the button presses there with the 17-year-olds.
There's many exciting button presses in the Urgot on the mid lane here. Saw some very interesting Urgot ultimates. In fact, I feel like this week we've seen very few Fear from Beyond Death's arm. Whether they're being interrupted by QSSs or Tom Kench or the person dying. So many different shenanigans have happened that AoE fears have been much more at a premium than you might have expected with this many Urgot games. Basically every game appears to be an Urgot game. Deft has been able to stabilize and, you know, staying within 10 CS and farming up a cull. He probably feels like he's basically winning against Draven, who often, especially with press the attack instead of Conqueror, is expected to win lane super hard.
Well, that was a trade that was just massively won by Kingzone. Tucson going in maybe a little bit over-aggressively, but still able to win out on that trade. Gets the Brittle proc, and Ghost down very, very low. Not a lot of mana there as well, so these Whirling Axes aren't going to be coming out as easily as you might like, because, waiting here in the mid lane, but Summit has this full minion wave pushing in towards him, so he'll be absolutely fine. No overextension there for the Urgot.
This is with a Summoner advantage and a Vamp Scepter advantage for Ghost. Already trading down, and now the friends are coming to make his life worse.
Yep, Summit does understand that
members
something like
of
this will be
Kingzone.
happening, but the Drifter will be making his way down as well. Ghost has the shield, but the Dark Passage is now on cooldown. Pawn armed that very, very early just to get down here. Kingzone not biting off more than they can chew. Will back away for the moment, but SANDBOX feeling the pressure that this squad is putting on.
I think it was too easy for SANDBOX to disengage the moment they heard the Pawn ultimate, because remember, he's the top laner right now.
Yeah.
They already saw everyone else rotating. They're like, wait, it's 5 people. Instantly disengage further under turret. So the global sound actually gave them that extra 2 seconds to think about their options, understand their situation, and Lissandra's top side, so it's actually just a cost to the side of Kingzone for no benefit.
Yep, it isn't great. But the thing that's weird is that Kingzone are able to put on so much pressure, and what did we say in the earlier stages of the game? It's that SANDBOX have a lot of these earlier tools that want to get online as this game goes on. Feels like that dive has really punished SANDBOX in a lot more ways than just the kills, because the gold is extraordinarily even. If you're a SANDBOX fan, though, you probably want it to be a little bit more in their favor.
Again, because there's no Conqueror, can Draven puncture through a Scion in the mid game, let alone the late game? And Tucson won't be super tanky, but has a lot of different ways to interact and interrupt Draven's positioning. Just that Ornn ultimate. The fact that it's a 10% slow now at max rank isn't going to dissuade Draven from flashing, from really trying to open up space. So there's a real potential that Ghost, if he never gets going, if he never gets a big cash in, if you can't cheat the item curve as Draven, you feel a lot more honest than the Dravens that pick up that 400 gold cash in and a half an item ahead at all moments.
Exactly right. And if you're ever moving backwards as well, Draven feels like a terrible champion. Moving forward, feels like the best champion in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, just feels like a little bit of a waste of space. And the same thing can be said for Kha'Zix if he's too far behind. On Fleek, of course, has had a lot of experience in solo queue with not being behind, because his solo queue account is certainly way up there, and especially on the Kha'Zix as well. We know that he can pilot this champion, but will they be able to get their opportunities to utilize what their strengths are before Kingzone get online?
One of the strengths of Kingzone because of this early game is how strong Cuz is on the bottom side. Ward not fully cleared there, but Lee Sin not revealed, of course, been controlled the entire time, and Tucson didn't auto it when it was in vision range of Lee Sin. Clearing out this second ward here, because knows that the lane spacing doesn't really suit a Lee Sin engage. Again, he got a lot of farm top. His experience bar is in a really good spot, given this Kha'Zix matchup, but it's well read by OnFleek. He's ahead of the play here and knows he's pretty sure Lee Sin's bot side, so how about a free Rift Herald?
Yeah, Dove going down a little bit lower here in this lane than he might have wanted against Pawn, who managed to get to 2-0-1, of course 100% kill contribution after that dive. And now looking for a little bit more. Ultimate has to be used defensively here from Dove, who actually lands all of his buttons, and Pawn with only a null magic mantle worth of magic resist.
The reason why he uses more is the Rift Herald's already so close to dying, and he says, I can't be the reason that we lose pressure topside. So I'll just use my ult, not have to worry about it too much. The fact that Pawn is getting this much respect from Dove with Glacial Shroud and not just mainlining into an adaptive helm is a really good sign, given that the evolving lane assignment will change again and again based on who has teleport as the game goes on. Bottom side, TP to lane, but it's just Tucson coming to help out his boy Deft.
Yeah, with his spellbook, he's going to have that exhaust back off very, very soon, which is going to be a little bit more important considering the Draven in the lane that he's going up against. Cuz going to take down this Rift Scuttler. Tucson just helping him out. Down the mid lane, Rascal. As the Shroud down, OnFleek's going to turn up, but isn't going to be able to find too much here as Tucson throws out the Ornhorn, but isn't going to make it back as Joker has found himself in the middle of Kingzone. Deft able to get the burst damage. And that is just Joker in the wrong position and his team not quite able to back him up.
Watching a lot of things happen at the moment. There was Lissandra engage, but it's actually drawing a flash away. But a lot of things happening here. I have to see the replay to understand why Joker thought he could walk through 3 control wards as Tucson's trying to interrupt Ghost.
Does find himself the knock-up here as Ghost trying to juggle these axes as best he can. Does use the flash, but there's the mini-stun against the wall. Lots of damage comes in, means that kill will be traded. A lot of those Adoration stacks will be stacked in, despite the fact that he did fall down. So Ghost with a lot of money. SANDBOX now move it towards the mid lane, and they've got that Rift Herald. This means a lot of extra gold, as Shelly will put her face into this structure pretty handily.
A lot of messy, different things happening here as the observer lag looked very amusing on Shelly going into the mid lane turret. The play was not ideal from either side. Felt like two of our bottom teams struggling to make a play. Don't know why Joker thought he could walk through the river there. The turret dive from Cuz, you understand why he went for it, but the follow flash from Ghost meant that the kick wasn't going to be a clean kill. Ends up being traded, and Infernal could be a further reward as we're fighting over this one, Atlas.
Yep, Rascal's going to jump his way forward. Does have the ultimate there.
Akali got it!
Oh my god! Managed to pick it up, I think, with the ult. Steps out of the shroud, but that is going to mean that he dies. That's a great performance already, though. You'll probably take the death, as Pawn will have to do the same. Zombie Scion's not going to be picking anyone up as he's got slowed down. And Kingzone, they do walk away with the Dragon, but SANDBOX pick up a couple of kills in response.
I think Akali was just putting threat onto the Kha'Zix because the Drake was falling so low and ended up picking up the objective. That's a big one. It's an Infernal. The second spawn over here, so Rascal does not die in vain. Ghost will push through the mid lane, and the bot lane push happens here. So they get some priority from it, SANDBOX. They still have a pretty good scenario with how it begun, with Joker just being caught rotating between bot and mid. And overall, no gold lead. The Infernal, the only meaningful one. Let's understand these plays, they happen. This is towards the tail end here. We saw Tucson fighting against Ghost. Nice buffering of the E to get the knock up here. Cuz flashes over, but because Ghost has flash and heal, it's not a kick away from safety of the turret.
Oh.
Ends up being a death. The cash-in not going to be massive because, of course, you lose so many of those adoration stacks.
Yeah.
Here is the replay, and it's a Q actually on after the R that gets the kill. Rascal dying for it, but I'll call that one hashtag worth.
Hashtag worth, yes. And Pawn finds himself in an off position, but that's mostly because they decided to challenge for the Dragon. Here he comes again, though. The choo-choo train not going to get any stuns, but he at least gets in amongst it. Will he be dying here, though, is the question, as Rascal finds that he cannot get in there. And Pawn will just sacrifice himself. Zombie Scion will pick up some farm. That was a little bit silly from the mid laner of Kingzone.
Messy game, Atlas. This is the day where you don't have enough time to do your hair and you have to deal with it, and it feels like both sides are there. You don't know that feel. You're looking fantastic as always, Atlas.
Thank you very much, Papa. You yourself as well, certainly. In amongst that crowd of fantastic hair.
You chop it short enough in the right way, it's pretty easy to maneuver, is what I've learned. Gonna watch the replay of this one. The drift looked inspired because he has to hit one, but of course, SANDBOX juked the right way. They juked towards Rascal as three men. For once, a fear beyond death arms, and Cuz, in spite of Summit being low on the health bar, knows it's best not to follow there. Here are the SANDBOX coaches, just some polite applause. Both teams have plenty of VOD review to do about the first 15 minutes.
Yes. And if we do some table setting here, if we bring it all back, it does mean that Kingzone will only be behind about 1.4 thousand gold. Nothing to write home about. They've got the Infernal Drake. So feeling like they have more of those scaling options, and we need to go back to the draft as well. There's a Kha'Zix, there is a Draven. This is a game where the mid-game is where SANDBOX really want to start excelling. Now they finally do have some gold, they do have some options. We'll see what they can do to press it forward.
Feels like the backline threat from Kingzone outclasses the backline threat from SANDBOX. They both have some backline threat, Lissandra, for example, but more reliable for Akali, Ornn, and Scion to shut down Draven, who, remember, in a team fight, you know if Draven's winning if he's able to pick up every axe. If he can min-max his positioning based on axes for damage rather than dodging enemies, then he's in a happy place. But the Ornn support, even alone, does a pretty good job of zoning him. Because of that, it feels like late game. Lucian Draven is kind of a wash when it comes to late game scaling. They're about the same, kind of in the middle tier. Because of the backline threat, you do give a slight lead to the side of Kingzone, but slight leads aren't necessarily going to be trump cards, and thus, with the game so even, does feel like the next mid-game play, the first blow-open play, might herald the winner of game number one.
And I feel like who's going to have the execution on point here as well. And I mean, I know it's a bit of a pun with Akali's ultimate, but it is going to have to be pretty good and a bit of an improvement from what we've seen so far, because there are so many go buttons, especially on the side of Kingzone. If they can land these buttons, they can make sure that SANDBOX don't have a way of answering. But we've seen the train not quite hit the station. We've seen kicks lead to deaths, and we've seen Rascal sort of getting himself executed.
No Shroud, they know, but Minion Wave is so far away that Rascal will be able to disengage pretty easily here. W second evolve, I believe, by OnFlick. Just spotting around, and when Akali and other threats lie in wait, I have no problem with this. Again, we're closer to the god-tier situation of what do I need from Kha'Zix rather than what's overpowered when it comes to evolving, which I'm sure was the original intent on the champion. Mid lane.
Yeah, Joker taking a heck of a lot of damage. Oh, can Tucson actually line this one up? Nails it onto Joker, and the dash is going to be there to get Deft the
so
kill.
Many
Picks
TPs.
that one up so easily as, yeah, we've got beams of light coming in from everywhere. SANDBOX a little bit more group, but the knock-up comes down from Tucson, and that's not going to do it. Cuz in a bit of trouble, but has the heal from Deft, and now Rascal dashing around the fight, picks up the first kill. Summit could be in trouble. The perfect execution is there. He is going to lose his life, but it's only FLICKR that survives the King's Own slaughter.
What a roller coaster of a team fight. It felt like SANDBOX were getting in position, but Ghost saw that, had the confidence, walked up and deleted by Rascal, finds the perfect execution, like you say, on the man they need to take down, and from there, the cleanup is true from King's Own DragonX.
Absolutely stunning stuff, and finally, those buttons are going to land. Pawn lines it up, gets on top of everyone, and Tucson starting that fight beautifully with the call of the Forge God. Joker, once again, a little bit out of position here, has been a bit of the problem case for SANDBOX so far.
He's been relentlessly face-checking bot side river when that's where the enemy has priority. Now, as Draven, you want priority, you don't have it, and then we get these beams of light, 4 teleports instantly, but the rest of SANDBOX aren't playing towards their teleports, they're playing towards safety, but at this moment with the self-ult, you think, okay, move up, says Ghost. Instantly, Rascal uses all of his abilities aggressively. Draven down, health bars down, and cleanup from King's Own DragonX.
Yeah, and holding onto the Shroud for the right position as well meant that Rascal could just dash around and get the damage in there before he falls. Didn't quite have the stopwatch built up yet. You can see that in his inventory now, but didn't have it for that last fight, if I'm not grievously mistaken. Deft able to do a lot of work as well as Rascal.
The opening pick there, meaning it was always going to be outnumbered, and the teleports leading to effective outnumbering because you could never actually wield 4 pieces of the chessboard at the same time.
Yeah.
Means the SANDBOX trade down again, and now the gold lead is only 200, was 1,000 just a couple of seconds ago. I believe Ghost did have his stopwatch, but misjudged the scenario. I guess in half an instant, Akali did the entire health bar. He's gone this very safe build. I think he's inspired by the plays that were required by Gango on his beloved Kalista. Yesterday, where sometimes you need a lot of defensive stats on Draven. He loves Bloodthirster first, and will continue to go safety first in this particular game. Probably going to have to skip over a Stormrazor that most Draven players prefer to go second item, because at this point, you're just piecing together whatever you can.
Yeah, it feels like Rapid Fire Cannon is on the way or something like that. Just give him that little bit of extra range, unless the Static Shiv is going to come in. That would be an odd choice, but maybe wants to clear out some more minions. Dove standing on top of a ward, so Def knows exactly what's going on. He's not going to get ganked here at this particular position. Still wanting to find themselves that turret in the mid lane. Haven't quite got the last few autos on there, and SANDBOX have done a decent job clearing out these minions. A couple of control wards on the top side, as you can see, so King's Own not without control, and that's why they're playing towards that side of the map as well. Rascal will make his way back towards the top side of the map, up against Summit. No, it's a little bit confusing having Summit and Rascal in the middle. That's just how the lanes started off. Top lane is now back in their natural habitat.
Speaking of top laners.
Yeah, he's going to get knocked up and taken down, cuz easily just puts the Lissandra in the ground. Maybe out of position for Dove. Not enough information there as Joker's going to get culled. Ghost does have that shield available from his Bloodthirster, so he'll soak up a lot of that damage as FLICKR trying to deal with Rascal, but he straight up can't at this point. Hextech Gunblade already there for the Akali.
Just like the Baron issues that SANDBOX had in closing out their first game against Gen G, I do like the fact that we're giving viewers the chance to learn how to think about the game via SANDBOX's mistakes. They keep making mistakes bot side because they're not updating the game scenario. The original scenario of, okay, we like our mid lane matchup. We actually got the preferable side of trading, this mid lane.
Yep, Joker once again going to get caught out. The knockup comes in, Death Sentence lands, but I think it's for himself and not for anyone else. The Summit has landed the ultimate death. The fear beyond death, double fear coming in onto Tucson and to Pawn. As they follow after the Ornn, he will be taken down as Ghost cashes in. Pawn underneath the turret, Rascal there as well, but it is 4-man strong, and Joker turned it into a bait.
Bit over-eager by King's Own as they're going for more
another
SANDBOX.
hook is going to land. Old man Joker picks up another one as Rascal is able to get himself out with the perfect execution, but Pawn will be falling as a result. Zombie Scion will limp his way back to base, and now SANDBOX are looking for one of their famous Barons.
King's Own were just too eager. Tucson went for the wall stun, but ended up being a self-stun when he missed any of the enemies. The rest of the team out of position. Rascal not there, and he wields a lot of the threat on this team. The Baron is attempted right now. They have no smite available, so the turn is what they want.
Yeah, Rascal looking to try and get in here as well. Health bars are pretty nice for a lot of the carries. Yeah, Rascal's able to dive forward. Can he steal this one as well?
No smite.
He's one dragon. Can he get it? Down to 25. Not going to happen as OnFleek picks that one up. But man, that was too close for comfort. The flash to follow Rascal through there as he finishes him off in the end. Damn, that was way too close.
Rascal can't have known how inspired a choice it was to go in 1v5. If he knew that Smite was down, that's a next level on information. Here's the replay where you first think, yep, we got Joker, he's dead again. No, he's able to kite up, and then Tucson just slams himself into the wall. The rest of the team's out of position, and Summit finds his man. He gets down Def. After all of the start of this play, they can get follow-up kills, and Rascal not being there on that aggressive move costs Kingzone eventually a Baron.
Exactly right. They were able to even pick up the hook here. Joker not going to get juked out by the Shroud. Rascal has to use the ultimate defensively, which just means he doesn't have the buttons available to stop a lot of what SANDBOX were trying to do in the Baron pit. Still did get a bit done, but SANDBOX will have the purple magic surrounding them, and now they'll even out the Drakes perfectly with an Infernal of their own.
And I love watching SANDBOX. They're such an honest team, Atlas. It felt like Griffin were cheating. Not supposed to be that good coming from challenges, the LCK, and beating all the big boys, looking flawless doing it.
Yeah.
SANDBOX makes the clear mistakes. They draft Draven, they lose bot side control, and yet they still keep running there because the coach said you got bot lane control, keep going there. Well, dying. Now Kingzone make their first mistake, and SANDBOX almost mismanaged the Baron. They get it too low with no smite, and Akali was a crapshoot away from stealing Baron 1v5. SANDBOX noses ahead, but Kingzone, there's going to be little mistakes like this to try to exploit.
Well, that is going to be the Dark Passage. Summit now going into the stopwatch there as well. Knock-up is nice from Tucson, but he takes so much damage. First kill does go over to Pawn, who does have the movement speed available to get on top of this. Kha'Zix, he'll be the second one, and they're dropping like flies. Claw of Doom will get Dove out, but Doom is not necessarily the word you'd associate with what that play was for SANDBOX.
SANDBOX not grouped, so even against Baron, Kingzone able to find a pick onto Summit and OnFleek. This will abate a lot of the Baron buff power play as well. Pawn pops a sweeper. Are they still camping? The answer is yes.
Yes, they are. The red shadows in there given away by the sweeper. Nicely done by Pawn.
Let's watch the replay here. This is Rascal grouped. Remember, was not grouped previously, and they're able there through Tucson being smart about his ult. He doesn't double down on trying to get the pick. He focuses on where the rest of SANDBOX are going to try to be defensive. Def's able to come in aggressively to pick up exit kills. So against Baron, 2 for 0, and getting recalls means that even the inner turrets looking surprisingly rotund during this remaining 45 seconds of Baron.
Joker actually taking that one as a Dark Passage available for Ghost. Wants to get some autos, but isn't going to pop the W. That is an odd choice.
Order of operations also was go in with the hook and then do a lantern. Oopsies on that one.
Yeah.
This is the Thresh I can learn from because I see myself.
Yeah, I feel better. I feel better for my Thresh play now.
And yet, he's made some really important hooks. He was a big contributor to the reason that the Urgot picked up the kill on Deft and got them a delayed Baron.
Oh yeah, and if you look back to the Gen G series, Joker was absolutely fantastic. So,
and if he can continue to be a shot-calling voice and 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that's already moving your position forward over the course of things. Speaking of moving forward, trying to use the dregs of the Baron here. 4 seconds remaining. Will they get an inner turret? They need it.
I think
so
the answer
close.
is yes.
They
Ghost
got
grabs
it.
it. Last auto attack comes through. Nicely done. But the defense of the bottom lane inner turret from Pawn is going to be successful. Mid lane as well is now being shoved forward. There is an inner available for Kingzone if they want to. That minion wave will hit it right on time. Dove going to be taking a Rift Scuttler instead of clearing out that wave. But Ghost wants to pick it up as best he can. 4-3 and 4 for the Draven now, who decided to go for the Guardian Angel.
So Draven has gone for the someone is going to try to zone me, so I need to be a bit of a tank build, but from behind, without big cash-ins. We still haven't seen a huge gold number flash up because the adoration stacks have been thinned out again and again.
And Deft is in a great spot at the moment. The Essence Reaver has been picked up, and as far as 3-item spikes for the Lucian are concerned, this is about the best one you can get.
And it's one of those things where Draven gets to cheat, Lucian gets to cheat a bit that Draven can't, in that Lucian actually has Essence Reaver as a sometimes option, because in a game where you look at the enemy squad and say, actually, they got backline threat, okay, I could be zoned, you can go Essence Reaver to increase your uptime on your dash and be relatively hard to pin down. Meanwhile, Draven needs to go Guardian Angel, Stasis, and other choices from behind. So in this sort of a game where CS lead is looking pretty good, a lot of good options here. This is a speculative ult.
Yep, Joker. Is he going to get stunned? It's going to take the damage, but not going to be the case as Bond has to flash his way out. The double TP once again as Summit finds his way into the backline, and Cuz already taken down to that Guardian Angel. On Fleek will be traded most likely, as that is a great prediction on the ultimate from Rascal, and now Summit has to try and get out. Cuz, what are you doing there, bud? He's just going to get taken down by Ghost. A little bit too far forward is now Akali on the sidelines, and Kingzone are all split up. Tucson trying to get out, but I don't think that dash is quite going to be enough. The heal used just for the movement speed, but Ghost doesn't have the W available and couldn't get it in time. Underneath the turret now, and the GA is there, so he can be a little bit more aggressive, but doesn't chase down Tucson.
Bit of a fiesta in the mid lane. Actually smart from Kingzone because they're isolating Sion with Draven, and Draven does no damage to Sion at this point in the game. It's not Conqueror, it's press the attack, and it's a pretty tanky Draven build. After that, though, Cuz gets so greedy, hard at the paint with Lee Syndrome over the wall into the Raptors. Gives up his life, and the cash-in to Draven is not the cash-in you want.
All right, Pon, I've seen this movie so many times, but
what about this movie?
Yeah, they're looking for this one once again, and yes, we've seen this one as well. If you guys are watching the Gen G series,
they like Baron.
It was a weird Baron dance situation where they were trying to dance with it as often as they possibly could. More knockups going to come in as the Call of the Forge God has been used already. Rascal wanting to try and go for yet another steal. Cuz not able to get in there on time as On Fleek locks down the Baron. And now Rascal gets into the backline. Deft is free hitting with the ultimate available as well. So Summit gets into the backline as best he can. Wants to try and get rid of this Lucian, who you can see is just skating around the rift. But Ghost, does he have the W? Can he get there? Kingzone going the wrong direction, trying to get the hell out of dodge. Baron available, and SANDBOX looking for kills afterwards as well. Cuz just taken down. A great claw, the Glacial Path. Gets the Lissandra in and flashes after Deft. They need to respect the damage, but On Fleek should be able to burst him out, and he does.
They get the cleanup kills there. SANDBOX to the bowl, the spoils. They're the one that forces Kingzone to come from multiple directions. You saw the Rascal, who does have the most agency here, skip into the back of the pit, realize that he can't stay there, go back over. His uptime in the team fight wasn't high enough, and even though Deft was skating around and getting maximum damage around him, all the other chess pieces were falling over. Speaking of falling over, this will be first inhibited of the game at 30 minutes. Probably not a game ender, but they walk up here, they stay in position. Remember, the enemy knows that the Kazakhs can't be around. They don't feel strong enough to contest 3 members of SANDBOX.
And so many of the minions there as well. So that inhibitor is certainly going to go down. SANDBOX looking for a buy before putting on a bit more pressure with the 2 minutes of Baron that they still have remaining. And you're talking about cakes and eating it too. I feel like SANDBOX got about everything from that exchange.
And we know SANDBOX love Baron. They tried to min-max it again and again in the Kalista game. They get the Baron down here. Now, Cuz wasn't actually repelled by Joker. He walks up, realizes he can't contest him, and in the end, it's just a speed thing. As you're watching the play, appreciate that Rascal should be the one zoning damage threats and can't. Gets turned upon by On Fleek, goes over the wall, and Deft is doing everything he can. He's getting every auto in, but you're seeing 5 members of SANDBOX zombie towards him and no frontline for Deft because SANDBOX brought Kingzone to them, forced them out of position, and then could feast upon those positioning problems.
Yeah, and it was a fantastic fear beyond death there as well. We mentioned the fact that we haven't been getting very many fears. Summit got a 3-man fear. Thankfully, Deft had a QSS for, so yes, was still able to continue skating around. But that front line that you were talking about, just no access to any of that peel that they would have wanted to provide.
It's a game ripe for a super play, Atlas, because neither of these teams are playing super high level right now. It's a pretty rusty game number 1 here, where there should be a lot of opportunities for an inspired play from Deft, for example, or Pawn, all these players with legacies, or even SANDBOX finding a match winner. So because right now people are getting caught in transition, we didn't see it in the replay, but on the chase, you know, the lantern wasn't being picked up. 2 people were hitting themselves left and right with the blasting plant. Little mistakes left and right on both teams means that a super play could be the decider.
Yep, anything could happen here as Cuz does have the Q landed onto Summit. Probably not going to be kicking him back now as Rascal trying to defend, but not going to be able to stop the super minions and On Fleek, and that opens up the rest of the base. SANDBOX able to take down the second inhibitor. Do have the inhibitor turret still available on the bottom side of the map, but 8,000 gold now the lead, and SANDBOX don't want to waste any more time. There's the claw.
It's the last minion wave. They're trying for something.
Yeah, Rascal has to go into that. Zonya's Hourglass as they do have the Ornhorn. It only gets the knock up on the Thresh, though. That is not the target that they needed to CC. And Dove gets into the backline, gets everyone with his buttons, and Rascal now underneath his fountain. No way to save anybody else. As Cuz goes down, followed very quickly by Tucson. Now Pawn, Rascal, and Def, the last men standing. But what can they do? The base is just being torn apart. And SANDBOX are going to go 3-0 in their first week of the LCK. What is it with these young guns? Everyone seems to be winning if you're coming in from Challenger for 2019, and they will finish off the Nexus and claim that first victory against Kingzone.
Our promotion teams, Damwon Gaming and SANDBOX, have played 5 games and won all of them, Atlas. This one was a bit of a rough one, but SANDBOX on paper and in practice was slightly over the top and too strong for Kingzone to be able to handle once the communication became reactive on the side of Kingzone rather than about the proactive moves they were making. Things did fall apart. The 3rd loss in a row for this squad. Still a series up for grabs. Still a series that could go to all 3 games. The SANDBOX Gaming more decisive, their communication clearer in the clutch, and thus deserving winners of game number 1.
Yeah, that was certainly messy. It wasn't one of those games that we've had a few of them where it just things go to plan. You plan it out, you understand exactly what should happen, and then it happens. This was not that. It was not that experience. This was a whole lot more crazy. That dive on the bottom side of the map put SANDBOX in a horrible position, but Kingzone weren't quite able to capitalize as effectively as you may have assumed at the beginning of the year last year.
It's a real on-the-fly shot calling game because both AD carries are snowball AD carries, and both of them were a little bit behind, so their positioning and builds were more defensive, but they were more tankiness and CC in the game rather than damage, which is usually about how do you approach a fight rather than about how much fight damage you have. So it ended up a lot of miscalculations on both sides, some skill shots going wide, and in the end, SANDBOX probably the 55-45 when it comes to the good play in this game. They win the game, and now let's see if we just get a bit of a wash. There might be a full reset for game number 2 in terms of picks and bans, but also play, and also we can judge how good the coaching staff are on building up their charges, because I don't think anyone comes away from this game with their heads held high, even though 5 players won and 5 players lost.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we were talking about the fact that there was a big front line here for Kingzone in order to take control. We thought OnFleek may have a bit of trouble getting himself in there. It looked to me like he had no issues at all cleaning things up, because the rest of the play was really good around him in the team fights. So the Kha'Zix working out really, really nicely. The Draven also having a good time, and watching Ghost beat Deft is a really weird experience for me, as we are going to have a look at that damage. And speaking of Kha'Zix reaching for relevancy, doubling the damage of your opponent is a pretty good way of demonstrating that things were absolutely fine in the jungle.
2.5 times, if you don't mind, coming through. So nice performance there from OnFleek, finding ways to get damage. And a lot of it W on the entire team, but you're still going to get the numbers. You still feel good. DPM champions exist for a reason. Everyone loves Ezreal and Jason pro play for that reason. Rascal just couldn't get it done in those last couple of team fights, so wasn't able to really get to the ascent that was possible here for this Akali. Again, I liked where Kingzone were looking like on paper, but sometimes in games like this, the paper's ripped up around 13 minutes, and we make our own paper. That paper is some dollar signs at the side of SANDBOX, 3-0. It'd be huge for them to go 4-0 in their first week.
If you're going to see it, like, from the perspective of the end of the year, that 2 of the challenger teams that made it in have undefeated weeks, absolutely incredible stuff. So SANDBOX right on the cusp of picking that one up. They only need another victory here, and that needs to be out of the next 2 games. So guys, we will be seeing that after a very short break, and then we will come back and we will see game number 2 between Kingzone and SANDBOX.